Okay, Shalom Aleichem. Hello. Today's Wednesday, and it's Gimel Mar Cheshvan. It's the third day of the month of Mar Cheshvan. I came into shul this afternoon, and a younger man says to me, Zog L'chaim, it's the yard of the Heilige Ruzhner. So I told him I'm a Chabad Chassid. So he retorted that the Yid came to the Rebbe by dollars. And he told the Rebbe that his Yemelad, this is Gimel Mar Cheshvan, so the Rebbe said to him, you should follow, I think he says, follow in the ways of the Ruzhner Rebbe, but you should be a Chabad Chassid, meaning somehow, it's not a stira, the Heilige Ruzhner. The Tzemach Tzedek used to call him the Heilige Ruzhner. There's a few tzaddikim that are called Kaddish. The Ruzhner is called Heilig, the Erachaim is called Heilig, and the Shalah is called Heilig. The Heilige Ruzhner, Heilige Shalah, Shalah Kaddish. I think everyone once asked why. The Erachaim HaKaddish, Shalah HaKaddish, the Heilige Ruzhner. The Polish say the Baal Shem Tov HaKaddish, but that's not part of our program, and I don't know the particulars. But I have a recollection that the Rebbe once talked about this idea that there's Shloisha Shenikroim Kaddish, that we call holy. And one of them is the Heilige Ruzhner. Just one sipurul at Tzemach Tzedek and the Ruzhner Rebbe never met, Begashmias. But they were in constant touch, telepathically and through shluchim. They were very big tzaddikim. And the Tzemach Tzedek went to the shlich to the Ruzhner Rebbe Nanetze to ask him counsel about a question that was going on. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, "Me vet on the brill." The Ruzhner said, "Put on the brill." Me vet sagen a kar kapitlach mit the Heilige Zeide David. We'll say a few prakim of Tillim from the Holy Zeide David HaMelech. And vet men sehen, was soll men sagen. We'll see what we should say to the Tzemach Tzedek. That's the Heilige Ruzhner. Heint is an Yortzeit. Und Zechusei und Zakusei Yogin Aleinu. He was an Einikel from the Mezritcher Magid. Rabbi Reuben Al-Vashal, my rabbi, said to me that the Tzanzer said that if any of the Einiklach of the Ruzhner make a simcha, and you don't say L'chaim and say Mazel Tov, you are made it B'malchus. That says the Sayin from Malucha. The Einiklach from the Mezritcher Magid. So, we're learning another Mamer. This is the 7th of 9 Maimorim that the Rebbe said in Chelik Tishrei Lamed, which is the year of the Yom Kippur War. Now it's 50 years later, it's in Badoyerin, and we're going through a Helam Behester. And all the heroes and all of the Torah that the Rebbe said then reverberate, they resonate, they klingen up, they ring like a bell now. And I said to my students yesterday that the Rebbe said that Chelik Tishrei, you're not allowed to say Tachnun, which is a raya that the Eibush is sending us a message that this Nisoyim we're going to overcome through Simcha. That's what the Rebbe said. That this Nisoyim we're going to overcome through Simcha. But now we said Tachnun yesterday, we said Tachnun today. And for the Gemara, the Rebbe extended Tishrei till Zayin Cheshvan, till next Sunday. V'ad Bechlal for sure. Chotcha Fila was saying Tachnun, by the Rebbe, anybody who remembers the Rebbe. In those years after the Rebbe made Zayin Cheshvan into the Yom Tif of Achan Shabisol Magil and Harpros, and you're not saying we're saying Talamat Levarach and Yisrael because it's still connected to Yom Tiv. By the Rebbe there was a Simcha, so they to helfen that whatever has to be completed has to be completed, and in such a way that tomorrow there won't be a reason to have to do it again, which is the point that the Rebbe always made. Now Rabbi Sai, as you know, I like to use the old Hanochas because they're precious to me, because I bought those Hanochas when I had no money. So I use them because I bought them when I was a bocher or a fish, a younger man. They had a spirit in the chashivas for me. But they're missing these to my mother. The Teres Menachem, the Hanochas Belahak, when they published the Sfarim, they did, of course, an enormous amount of research, and they collected from many private people who wrote Hanochas Protiyes v'Kayetze B'zeh, and they found Poshet 2 Maimorim that are missing in the old Krach. The Simchas Torah was Friday. So there was a Mamer that the Rebbe said Simchas Torah Friday night, which we learned yesterday and 2 days ago. The next day Shabbos, the Rebbe said Chassidus twice. Shabbos, Braishis, which was Isra Chag of Simchas Torah, there were 2 Verbrengenischen. There was a Verbrengen Shabbos afternoon, and there was a Verbrengen Watch of Simchas Torah, which was quite common. Oftentimes the Rebbe made 2 Verbrengenischen. Shabbos Bereshis, which is much as Simchas Torah. Rosh Hashanah, he didn't do it as much, but Simchas Torah often. If Simchas Torah was on a Friday, there would be a Fabringen going from Friday into Shabbos, which was usually shorter. The Rebbe would ask somebody to be paid a smapa makadesh, but the Rebbe himself would not do it and not participate. Kidduam Afursim, and then the Rebbe stopped it and started it again. Rabbi Broin soll gesund sein. Harav Broin Shlita told me that in the later years the Rebbe indicated that he wants nobody to do paid a smapa makadesh altogether, not just the Rabbeim never did paid a smapa makadesh. So, but the Rebbe used to ask for to pay the smapa, and people would say l'chaim, but the Rebbe would wash before the shkia. But once the shkia came, going into Friday night, the Rebbe did not eat or drink. The Fabringen would go on however long it was. The Rebbe would say Birchas HaMazon, and he would not drink the wine, and he would say that the next day he would give it at Kesha Bracha, I think Shabbos afternoon. I think. But often the Seder was, the Rebbe made a second Fabringen Shabbos, but that was the Shabbos Mavarchem Fabringen, because Shabbos Bereshis is Shabbos Mavarchem always, and the Rebbe always Fabringen Shabbos Mavarchem. And then towards the end of Shabbos, the Rebbe bring the second time, which was called the Hamshech of the Fabringen of Simchas Torah, a continuation of the Simchas Torah Fabringen. So this Shabbos, the Rebbe spoke two Maimerim. The first Mamer, they have only Roshi Prokim. You can see the whole Mamer is less than 2 Amudim, Bereshis. And the next Mamer, which is a very interesting Mamer, Leis Neflois Diel Zavade, it goes back to one of the Maimerim we had before. If I'm not mistaken, it's the Mamer of a Sukkot Teishu Shivas Yamim called the Ezer V'Chesh B'Sukkos, where the Rebbe spoke about the idea of Yismech Kol Yisol Mekadesh Shemecha. This Mamer, it's an interesting Mamer. It's 8 Amudim long, but half of it is the same theme, basically, and basically is a big bad word of Mekadesh Shemecha. It's a longer Mamer, and that they found the full Hanocha. In the old Hanochas, the Mamer is also missing. So we're going to learn today Braishis, and in Mitzvah Hashem, hopefully, I don't want to say when because I don't want to jinx myself, but we're also going to learn the Mamer, Leis Neflois Diel Zavade Gileilam Chaste. And then we'll have Noach. So we'll sort of catch up, if not before Shabbos, and then after Shabbos in Mitzvah Hashem. So we're learning a Mamer Braishis. We don't have a whole Mamer. I have Mamish Shtik Halach. Mamish Shtik Halach. So it's very hard to piece together from what we have what the Rebbe is thinking. But when you learn the Mamer, what strikes you initially is that Rosh Hashanah, everything starts over. The idea that in Rosh Hashanah everything starts over has many aspects. And one of the aspects is that in Rosh Hashanah you have everything that's going to exist in the whole year. Just like the head is not just the beginning of the body, but it's the source of the body, and the whole body is included in the head. The same is to Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah includes a whole year in a microcosm, is included in the head. The same can be said of Tishrei, and as you'll see in this Mamer, the same can be said of the first pasuk in the Torah. But one of the ideas that's going to emerge is that there is the way the whole year is in the head, and then there's the way the whole year manifests. And if I don't misunderstand, that's how the Rebbe is going to explain the difference between Rosh Hashanah and Shabbos Bereshis. Rosh Hashanah, it's all included in an Nekudah on a theoretical level, and in Shabbos Bereshis, it's manifest into the details that are going to come down into the whole year. Now, like I said, this Mamer is very short, and in the next Mamer, the Rebbe is going to say an unbelievable word about Shabbos Bereshis. The Rebbe is going to say that in a certain aspect, Shabbos is even higher than Rosh Hashanah. Because Rosh Hashanah is close enough to the year to be called the head of the year, and it includes the whole year. And the Inyan of Shabbos is Tainug, which is even higher than that. You'll see this in the next Mamer. The reason I'm mentioning it now, because at the end of this Mamer, the Rebbe is also going to speak about the Ma'ila Shabbos Bereshis of Rosh Hashanah, so I threw it in at the outset. But frankly, I'm talking too much. Let's go to the Mamer, okay? It's a very short Mamer because it's not a complete Mamer. The Nekudah is there is an idea where everything that's going to come later exists as a point in the head, and the head is Bereshis, the head is Rosh Hashanah, and then it's how it manifests actually throughout the year into many, many details. So the Rebbe begins Bereshis Bar Elokim es Shemaim v'Sa'aretz. The first pasuk in the Torah, in the beginning, Elokim created heaven and earth. Now, The next pasuk says, the Torah describes the next pasuk as there being chaos and disorder and lack of form, and then you have a yemer elikim yihir. So the question is, if the second pasuk describes chaos and disorder and a nebula, everything is not fixed. Toyev avayu is like a nebula, nothing is fixed. And only in the third pasuk do you have a distinct creation called Oyer. So how could the first pasuk describe a complete creation? Braishis ViYaakov Halach Lidarko, in the beginning He created heaven and earth. If the next pasuk is describing a nebulous heaven and a nebulous earth, it's not in order. So Rashi is worried about this first pasuk. How could the first pasuk describe a specific second if the second pasuk is describing everything is nebulous? And Rashi's answer is that the first pasuk is a medrash. It's not about the creation of the world, it's about the reason for the creation, Beis Reishis. Or, Rashi says alternatively, B'tchilas b'roi shamayim v'aretz, in the beginning of creation, heaven and earth, Vaisa avoda. So Rashi is concerned. I think I have a class at insidechassidus.org. If you go to Pashas Braishis, the Pasha classes, I have a class on the first pasuk. If the second pasuk describes a nebulous creation, how could the first pasuk describe a complete creation? So Rashi says either it's going on Taimei Abriya or it's a Braishis b'roi shamayim v'aretz. It's a preemption. Not that in the beginning God created. In the beginning of the creation, heaven and earth, Vaisa avoda. But the Zohar says a different pshat. The Braishis ViYaakov goes on creation of Atzilus, and Zohar says was the next word of Mamer. And all the Rishonim brings this, that Ramban brings this, that Rabbi Bechaya, a lot of the Rishonim that explain things like Avoda say that the first pasuk is talking about a complete creation, but it's an Atzilus, and the second pasuk, which seems to be describing a nebula, a vague creation. And the question is, if in the second pasuk the creation is vague, how could the first pasuk describe a crisp and clear and complete creation? And the answer is because the first pasuk is describing the world of Atzilus, and the second pasuk is describing the lower worlds. And the Rebbe Yeshav and Ayin Nun Aleph, if you look in footnote 2, is a huge arichis, if I'm not mistaken, on Braishis, that revolves around this Zohar. So the Rebbe brings it here. Vaisa the pasuk says that the pasuk zemer Muslim cholas S'firos, the first pasuk in the Chumash, is describing a complete creation, but on the level of 10 S'firos of Atzilus. And this, that the next pasuk is describing a nebula is going on the lower worlds. Hachel S'firos HaChochma, beginning with Chochma, because Braishis goes on Chochma. Braishis goes on Chochma, and Bara goes on Bina, and I think Elikim goes on Keser, something like that. And Shemayim and Aretz is on Malchus. All 10 S'firos of Atzilus are found in this first pasuk. Vayno she'inyan de Braishis Bara. This first pasuk, Braishis para koi loy rak al shmayim v'aretz kipshutim be'elam hazar, not going on the creation of the physical heaven and earth kipshute, but on S'firos d'Atzilus, because the next pasuk that begins to talk about elam abriya, which is the lower worlds. You see, but I just misread the Mamer. Right? The Rebbe says loy rak al shmayim v'aretz kipshute elagam. Right? The Rebbe says twice, not like I'm telling you from the Zohar. Not that Braishis is Atzilus, and the second pasuk is Bria, but that Braishis is all the worlds, including Atzilus. So the Maimarim of the Arbeim are confusing it further. Right? Braishis Bar Lakim goes on the creation of S'firos d'Atzilus, and Bria, and Yetzira, and Bria, and Yetzira, and Asiya. And this at the next pasuk, seems to be describing a nebula, that has to be explained separately. So now let's read it again correctly. Okay? Fine, what this means, but this first pasuk koi loy rak al shemayim v'aretz kipshutim be'elam, doesn't only mean the physical creation of physical heaven and earth, as represented by the first pasuk, which will then immediately create the question of what does the next pasuk, which describes nebulous, unfixed, uncrisped, undeveloped, unspecified creations in the state of Teyu Vavehu. So without answering that question, the Rebbe is saying that the first pasuk is talking about the physical heaven and earth, but it's also talking about the mystical heaven and earth. But then the Rebbe adds, it's not only Atzilus, S'firos, which goes on Atzilus, but it's Shurim im called out Elabes, Atzilus, B'Yetzir Asiya. The 10 S'firos, Braishis, and Bara Lakim, which goes on Chochma, and Bina, and Keser, and Shemayim and Earth, it goes on the Midas and Malchus, are not only in Atzilus, they're in all 4 worlds. Ukamuf and Gamizeh, and the idea That the first pasuk is not speaking only about S'firos of Atzilus, but it's speaking about S'firos in all four worlds, as indicated from the fact that Braishis is Aschala Satera. Braishis is the beginning of the Torah. And since the beginning of the Torah, it makes sense that it should represent the entirety of the Torah. And we know from other places that B'Torah Klulim called Al Del Masabiyah, then Torah include all four worlds Atzilus. Bria, Yitzir Asiya, like the famous Torah from Kisva Nizal. V'al Teiroscha Shali Madatonu, we say this in benching. V'al Teiroscha the Torah Atzilus, Shali Madatonu the Torah Sabriya. That in the Torah of all four worlds, the four levels of learning Torah. Atzilus is Kabbalah, Bria is Drush, which means Halacha and Medrash, and Yitzira is Remez, and Asiya is Pshat. So, even though B'Pashtas, Braishis ViYaakov Halach says goes in S'firos of Atzilus, in as much as this pasuk is talking about Torah, and Torah exists in all four worlds, so Braishis is going on the S'firos of each one of the four worlds. In other words, if you wanted to read between the lines, here's what you would read. If you're talking about the creation of the worlds per se, Braishis ViYaakov Halach Lidarko is going only on the world of Atzilus. But if you're talking about how the Braishis ViYaakov Halach has S'firos of Atzilus that are in Torah, it's going in all four worlds. So Begashmius, it's only Atzilus. Yeah? In other words, in a level of Helavaz, it's only Atzilus. On the level of Torah, it's how in the S'firos of Atzilus, you have the S'firos of Bria, and the S'firos of Yetzira, and the S'firos of Asiya. Ukiyadua, as we know, Shekashihudi Eila L'Teira, Ve'elam Lamatam, when the Yid in this world gets an Aliya. And of course, the reason we know this is because the Rebbe speaks about it in the Mamer of Chassan. The Frierdiker Rebbe spoke, V'chol Banayach L'mida L'Shem, V'rav Shleim Banoyach. When the Rebbe's Chassan, our Rebbe got married, the Rebbe Ayat said, Mamer, V'chol Banayach L'mudei Havaya. It doesn't say Limudei Torah Hashem, it's Limudei Havaya, and the Rebbe explains, and the Frierdiker Rebbe explains in that Mamer, the significance of a chassan getting an Aliya. But he gets an Aliya to the Torah, as an Aliya in the world, which gives him a koyach to go to the chasana. So when a Yid gets an Aliya, begashmis, by the Torah, his Neshama has an Aliya, and it's known that the Aliya is b'chol adagash Neshama. When you get an Aliya, all levels of Neshama have an Aliya, nefesh, ruach, Neshama, chaya, and yechida, which is 5 levels. Problem is, we have only 4 worlds, so the Rebbe brings from the Zohar, Shenechsheves lepamim v'dalmadek, because according to the Zohar, there's only 4 levels of the Neshama, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Neshama of the Neshama, which we divide into the 2 levels of Chaya and Yechida, which also corresponds to the Aldel Masabiyah. So Braishis goes on the S'firos. And in as much as Braishis is part of Torah, it goes on the S'firos, which in all 4 worlds, because the Torah in each of the 4 worlds, or to say it slightly differently, the Torah in each of the 4 worlds is like the Atzilus of each of these 4 worlds. And as a result, Braishis includes all 4 worlds, at least as much as the Torah is concerned. And it also includes all 4 levels of a Yiddish Neshama. When a Yid gets an Aliya L'Torah, he's elevating all levels of his Neshama. So there's arguably 2 things here. Number 1, Torah. And number 2, a Yid who gets an Aliya L'Torah. When you're speaking about Torah, Braishis is first Atzilus, then Bria, then Yetzira, then Asiya. When you speak about a Yid getting an Aliya L'Torah, it's the other way around. The Yid is down here, it's first Asiya, then Yetzira, then Bria, then Atzilus. It's first Nefesh, then Ruach, then Neshama, and then Neshama L'Neshama. So in the pasuk Braishis is included the whole Seder Hishtalshelus. From the perspective of Torah alone, it's from the top down. And from the perspective of a Yid who's Oila L'Torah, it's from the bottom up. And then the Rebbe continues, the davening is the same thing. The davening is all 4 worlds, but like the Oila L'Torah, the 4 worlds as they are in davening are from the bottom up. You have also all 4 rungs of Tefilla, which correspond to the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. But in contrast to where it is in Torah by itself, that it's first Atzilus, then Bria, then Yetzira, then Asiya. It's like when a person is getting an Aliya. When you're getting an Aliya L'Torah, you're going from Asiya to Yetzira to Bria to Atzilus. The same is true when you're davening until Baruch Shabbat is Asiya, until Yishtabach is Yetzira, Berchas Kishma is Bria, and Shemini Esrei is Atzilus. Because davening affects an Aliya in the world. So Braishis can be seen. Torah by itself is from the top down, the Eila L'Torah and the Eila L'Tefilla is from the bottom up. So the Nakuda is that Braishis includes all the 4 worlds. The shaila is only whether you're seeing them on a theoretical level from the top down, or you're seeing them on a Avoda level from the bottom up. And he continues and he says, just like you have the whole Seder Hishtalshelus, which is included in the Pasuk Braishis on the level of Torah. And just like you have the whole Seder Hishtalshelus included in a Yid's davening, there's also a Yid, the whole Seder Hishtalshelus exists in Tishrei. Aliya, you do all of us on Tishrei, Asiya, Reishis. The word Tish is the same letters that makes the word head or beginning, except it's missing the aleph, like it says in the Pasuk Braishis Ashar Reishis Chosik. So of course the reason it's Chosek is because it's Rasha B'tchilosa Mesasheres B'Seifa. The idea that the year starts off impoverished is the basis for the bracha, which is going to come later. But Reishis with an aleph, without an aleph, means the head. In other words, we're taking out the aleph not to indicate that Tishrei is not the head, it's to indicate that the head is poor. But Tishrei, Asiya, Reishis includes the whole year. Just like Braishis includes the whole Torah, right? And then when he gets an Aliya, in Torah he's an Aliya. When he gets an Aliya, in Tefilla he has an Aliya. The same is true as Tishrei, includes the whole year. For Inyam Azan he explained that Reishis Hashanah goes on Rosh Hashanah. The beginning of the year, the head of the year goes on Rosh Hashanah. Shabbai Nifal, which affects Inif Tamluchoni Aleichem for the entirety of the year. And the whole year exists in Rosh Hashanah in a microcosm. And how does the Eibush to become the king over the whole world in Rosh Hashanah? B'meh b'shefer is through blowing shefer. Top of page Mem Hey, you blow a physical shefer, which is long lamata down here. Pelim is called Amshachas. You bring godliness down from the highest levels to the lowest levels. From the very highest of levels until Pnimis V'Atzma Saint Safe. Umisham Nimshach Amata B'Yesek comes all the way down into the physical world and physical brachas. B'Negeya Lebona Chayum Ezena, children, health, wealth. Vivichi, and all of them in abundance, and it all begins with Tishrei Asiya Reishis. That in the Inyan of Tishrei, which is Asiya Reishis, is included Kol Prate and Yanon the Braishis ViYaakov Halach, all the details that are going to be spelled out in Braishis Hashmayim V'Sa'aretz. First Atzilus, then Bria, then Yetzirah, then Asiya. So here too you have two Inyanim. Just like when you speak about Braishis, right? The Torah as it is by itself is first Atzilus, then Bria, then Yetzirah, then Asiya. But when Yid gets an Aliya or Yid davens, he goes from Asiya to Yetzirah, to Bria, to Atzilus. Shemesh was Tishrei. Tishrei by itself is the head of the year, which encompasses the entirety that's going to follow. But the Avoda of the person is to raise himself up from a lower level to a higher level, and to bring down from that highest level into the lowest levels. And the Rebbe says, "V'zeu gam and yonush achedesh Tishrei." That's the whole theme of Tishrei, which is Asiya Reishis. That you have the whole year included in the head, and from the head it comes out into the world. And the Avodah of a Yid is to raise himself from a lower level to a higher level and bring it down from the highest of levels into the world. That he is lashpi kol hashana kol to have an influence in the whole world. That's called lamshachas, all good things. Milmai lamai from the highest of levels, b'yesad lamat ma b'yesad, the lowest of levels. And again, to me it seems like there's two inyanim. There's Torah and Aliya l'Torah. And al derech zeh there is the etzem inyan of Tishrei, which is milmayla lamata, the Avodah of Tishrei, which is milmata lamayla. Ubeprati is Yossi, more specifically, harei zachiluk, it's the distinction ben ascholas hachedesh Rosh Hashanah, Reishis Hashanah, the beginning of the year, the head of the year, which is Rosh Hashanah, which is called Reishis, l'siyumei b'Shabbos Parshas Braishis, and the end of the year, the end of Tishrei, which is Shabbos Braishis. Says the Rebbe Shali Acher is a maschila that after Shabbos Braishis we begin the Ikir Avoda Lamata Ba'oros, the primary union of working on this earth in a way of ViYaakov Halach Lidarko. So what's the difference between Rosh Hashanah and Shabbos Braishis? To me it seems like in Rosh Hashanah everything is in a nekuda on the highest of levels, and in Shabbos Braishis everything is manifest. Maybe it's manifest in a nekuda, but everything is brought down, and from Shabbos Braishis, where everything is brought down, begins the avoda of spelling it out over the course of the year in details. So in other words, within Tishrei itself, Rosh Hashanah would be how everything is included in the highest level, and Shabbos Braishis means how it would be brought down into the world. Now in the next Mamer, which we're going to learn after this, the Mamer Lo'esin Efloid Gedel Savade from Tafshin Lamedalid, in the Hanocha Teres Menachem Sefer, it's on page Nun Aleph. The Rebbe discusses the difference between Rosh Hashanah and Shabbos Braishis and puts Shabbos Braishis on a pedestal. Rosh Hashanah, says the Rebbe, is connected to the body, just like the head is connected to the body. Shabbos, argues the Rebbe, is Tainug, which is above any relationship with the world. And he says Shabbos is not called the head because it's higher than the madrega of being a head, which is fascinating. So Shabbos Braishis culminates Tishrei, but it graduates Tishrei. In other words, Tishrei, the whole year, begins as a head, and from the head it's going to radiate to the whole body. On Shabbos Braishis, you access something which is higher not only than the year, but even the head of the year, and bring that into the year as well. So in that Mamer, the impression seems to be that Shabbos is a higher madrega than Rosh Hashanah. It's the idea of Tainuk. Here, it's very, very vague. This Mamer is, like I said before, it's only Rashi Prakim Bulvad, so it's hard to know precisely what the Rebbe means. But here, the Rebbe means that Shabbos is the manifestation of everything that's in the head. But I don't know. Anyway, the Rebbe concludes, it should be the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that now that Tishrei is over, and we have both the Aliya of Tishrei, like Aliya the Torah, like Aliya of Tefilla, and like the Avoda of Aliya during Chodesh Tishrei. And we also have the Hamshach of Tishrei, like the Torah as it is by itself, Braishis ViYaakov Halach, and the bringing forward of Tishrei downward, which, if I understood it correctly, is culminating in Shabbos Braishis. So after you have what Tishrei is, the Avoda of Aliya of Tishrei, the Avoda of Hamshach of Tishrei, then comes how it translates into the whole year in what's called ViYaakov Halach Lidarko. And of course, ViYaakov Halach Lidarko means we go back to our regular lives, and we serve Hashem as Yidden based on the inspiration that we got in the Yom Neroyim in our regular lives. But there's a second expression, that ViYaakov Halach Lidarko means you leave, you go away from the holiness of Tishrei. And then you get home, there's another expression which is Fananda Pak in the Pek, unpack the wares, the material, what you acquired in Chodesh Tishrei, so to know what koiches you have for the whole avoid of the whole year. And that's the culmination of the Yaakov Halach Lidarko. So the Rebbe says, when we go away from the inspiration of Tishrei, both the Aliya and the Hamshach, into the Yaakov Halach Lidarko, it should be be'efen the ViYaakov Halach. Now we're not afraid to go. And we go like Yaakov Avinu raised his legs and he went, Besimcha ubezrizos, like Rashi says that Mishin is pasle besura toiva. Hashem gave him the good news. Shehuftach b'shmira. Hashem promised that he's going to look after him and take care of him and so on. So he was no longer afraid. And no soli beyes raglav. His heart raised his feet. And as the kalalech has become very easy for him to walk because he had a certitude, had a certainty that the Eibush is going to protect him. And when a person has that kind of trust that the Eibush is going to help us during the course of the year, as we go away from Yom Neroyim, automatically our departure from Tishrei is done with joy. And our measure of joy, or our measure of trust, which shows itself in joy, it increases even more. The brachas that the Eibishter gives us to succeed in all things, including connected to conquer and to defeat all things that are opposite of what a Yid is and what a Vedas Hashem is. It all starts spiritually. And the first war, so he should say the first war is the war of Tefilla, right? Sleisa Shas Krova, but he doesn't. He says, it's the war of Birurim. Bread is a mashal for all Gashmiistic things. And Nama Pumchar Balechal involved with bread is through a knife. In other words, we're involved in Gashmis, it's a war. And the nature of this war is that Hashem because in our wars, particularly in our camps, where soldiers are mobilized to fight a war for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Shechina rests, and therefore there's a requirement and there's a reality of. There's a holiness in the camp because the Eibush is present there. And as a result, they have koichas neibish to be matzliach in the mulchama. Now that Rebbe adds words which are clearly speaking to the events of the Yom Kippur War. Especially in regard to those shemeginim that protect al kama rivaveis b'nei Yisrael, many myriads of the Jewish people. He's talking about Eretz Yisrael and the Yom Kippur War, and of course these words resonate today. Sheyi etzlam, they should have inyan hanitzachim, the idea of victory. Be'efen in such a level that our victory is not just a victory, but we go out with an outstretched, proud arm. And to add an expression which the Rebbe would often use, and we make a march of nitzach, we make a parade of victory. The Rebbe spoke that the Medrash says that one of the explanations of the Dal Minim is that when two nations fight and then the conflagration is over, they go their separate ways to lick their wounds. How do you know which side won? And of course the answer is the one who makes the parade. Because the parade is a symbol of Anan Nitzuchaya, we were victorious, like the idea of Didan Notzach. And that's what the Dal Minim represent, because they're a mashal, the esreg and the lulav and the hadas and the for various different weapons of war, a spear and a sword and so forth. So there's the Didan Notzach, and there's the parade of the Didan Notzach, and the parade of the Didan Notzach is proof that the victory is on our side. And I'm speaking completely off the record, and I shouldn't do that in my Chassidus. I think if you want to learn a lesson from the Yom Kippur War, and from the fact that now, exactly 50 years later, we have this new test, it's this idea. The Rebbe spoke about this in Tafshin and Beis. When the Eibishter makes a nest, you have to celebrate it. The unfortunate truth was that after the Yom Kippur War, the Egyptians make the parade and we don't. And maybe this is the message, that we have to start celebrating the Eibishter Nisim and the Flies, and absolutely make a parade and celebrate the miracles the Eibishter does for us. And the fact that so-and-so may be insulted or is not going to like it, that's none of our concern. And maybe this is what the Eibishter is anticipating, that we should celebrate the Nisim and the Flies that he does for us. The ultimate miracle that the Eibush does for us is that he do absolutely nothing. Havaya Yilachem Lachem, the Eibush himself fights the wars on behalf of the Jewish people. And not that we fight and the Eibush holds our hand, but we're silent. Like the Torah Midi, we do nothing. So that's this Mamer Braishis. So how long did it take me to teach it? About half an hour. And I have no idea what the message of the Mamer is. Clearly it's talking about the whole Seder, the Hishtalshelus and Torah and the Tefilla and in the world. Clearly it's talking about how you have these Hishtalshelus and Mulmayla Lamata, Mulmata Lamayla. Clearly you have the idea that Chedesh Tishrei is a klal and after Tishrei comes Pratim. Clearly you have the theme of Simcha and winning wars. But the point of this Mamer eludes me. And in Mitzvah Shem tomorrow we're going to learn the beginning, B'li Neder, of the next Mamer. I'm not sure exactly in what order I'm going to teach it just yet, but that's what's next on our agenda.